Candyman. 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 All right, so, Candyman. You know this movie. I know this movie. Everybody knows this movie. My name is Michael Keane. Let's talk about Candyman, Blu-ray release from Shout Factory / Scream Factory. That always confuses me, but whatever. This thing is beautiful. This is... I have a few Scream Factory and Shout Factory releases in my collection. This is the best one I've gotten so far, and we'll talk about why. There's a lot to go over here. So first off, quick summary of the movie. I don't think anyone has a problem with this. I don't think anyone is wondering what Candyman's about, but for the two of you out there, and I know you're out there, the two people that don't know what the fuck Candyman is, let's get a brief synopsis. So Candyman follows Helen Lyle, played by Virginia Madsen. She's a graduate student writing her thesis on urban legends. Helen, with her friend Bernadette, played by Casey Lemons, hears about a local urban legend concerning the unjustly murdered and therefore quite vengeful Candyman. This sharply dressed specter, played by Tony Todd, supposedly will tear you groin to gullet with his hook for a hand if you say his name 5 times while looking in a mirror. In search of more information and buoyed by unfiltered arrogance, Helen goes to real-life Chicago housing project Cabrini Green, a dangerous ghetto ruled by gangs and, potentially, the Candyman himself. What follows is a story of incredible horror and violence, racial injustice, social issues, all kinds of stuff, and it is fucking amazing. It's bolstered by a phenomenal score by Philip Glass. I would actually argue maybe Philip Glass's best score, or at least his best genre score. I'll give it that much. Directed by Bernard Rose, who of course did Paper House, and is a real cool director to look into. If you haven't looked into his filmography, you probably should. He has some really weird experimental shit on there that you might not necessarily like, but you'll at least appreciate. Now, let's talk about this Blu-ray. This here Blu-ray is pretty dope. We have cover art on the front by Joel Robinson, and it's brand new cover art for this release, and you know what? It looks pretty cool. We'll get into it a little bit more in a second, but cool cover art. If you are to take it off, you'll find that you have the same cover art on the normal standard Blu-ray. If you open her up, well, first off, you'll have all the sweet jazz in the back there. But open it up, and you have 2 discs. One is the unrated cut with the new art by Joel Robinson. One is the old art that you might have seen in the Blockbuster when you were a kid, and that has the theatrical cut. The unrated cut has a bit more of the new special features, whereas the theatrical cut disc has the older ported special features. And then if you were to take this sucker out, you get the original cover art as a potential bonus, or a burp. You get the old cover art that you can use instead if you prefer it. I personally do, so I'm going to go ahead and switch that real quick. Doop. Good enough. All right, so there you go. Slipcase, pretty dope. So this way I can have my cool gory art, but then I can take it up and show the mysterious art that I kind of prefer, because I think that, you know, Candyman, some of the things that works for Candyman is it's not necessarily a super violent story. There's some violent shit that happens, don't get me wrong, but it's not really good because of the violence. And when the violence does occur, it's shocking because this isn't a film that is all about gore. There's plenty of blood, as I mentioned. If you want a lot of blood, you'll get a lot of blood, but it's not really about that. And honestly, I think that the least interesting parts of the film are the gorier moments. In fact, the unrated cut, really, there's not much difference between the 2 cuts. There's a few seconds of additional footage kind of spread around, and a lot of it has to do with that gore that was trimmed back. They call it a director's cut. I don't know how much of that is true, how much Bernard Rose really needed that extra gore in there. I find that a little suspect, but at the same time, I get it. He probably didn't want any cuts, and they wanted cuts, and directors generally don't like cuts, so that makes sense. Okay, so before we get into the plethora of extras, I just want to talk about a few little additional physical things. So let's get physical for a second. First off, the limited edition version, it's the pre-orders, but I think this still counts as pre-orders. So the first 2,000 copies sold came with a few additional options. For one thing, you get this additional slipcover art. This is art by, I'm gonna just look at my computer real quick, Las Marquez. I don't know how to say that person's name, but artist Las Marquez, El Marquez, made this particular artwork. Now on the front you have his artwork, on the back you have a screenshot of Helen going through the mouth wall thing into the secret area in Cabrini Green. I'm not a fan of this artwork, I'll be honest with you. I'm not big on this particular art. I think it kind of gets the wrong idea across. It shows Candyman as this kind of standard slasher killer, in my view, and he's not that. You know, I mentioned that I prefer the old artwork, and that's really because it gets the feel of the film across. And this isn't the feel of the film. You know, it is about an urban legend, but that's not really the point. And, you know, when you make Candyman this, like, gross, deranged killer with, like, weird teeth and stuff, I don't know, it sends the wrong message for me. No offense to the artist, I just think it's a little lame. When I ordered this, I of course got the pre-order package, and that's why I got the slipcover. I also got 2 posters. All right, so here is, I'm just gonna bring out, here's the one of the preferred artwork, and that's what that looks like. Now, you might notice that right here is, it's a little jagged, a little rough around the edges, quite literally. And if I bring up the, I'm just gonna set this aside. If you bring up the other artwork that I care even less about, also super jagged on the edges. So, and also here's the full poster for you. Now, they came that way. The packaging looked something like this. Now, unlike a normal poster tube, and what you'd expect to see, which is these little caps on the end, the poster tube I got, the poster tube was pinched in on the sides. So both sides, they didn't have caps, they just were pinched in. And when I got this package, I actually thought that it was like, I thought, Michael, did you order something from an eBayer that you shouldn't have? An eBayer who you should have checked the reviews for, because the eBayer was not particularly good at packaging things. And then I opened it up and I was like, lo and behold, oh, it's from Shout Factory. That's weird, they're kind of a big company. Why is their packaging so terrible? And it was literally like a box that was way too small for a poster tube, because the poster tube was like lodged in the box on top of the Blu-ray and the slipcover. Now, luckily, these two things are fine. They somehow survived the mail process, but the posters are unusable. They're just not, like, if they're torn on the edges, what's the point of the posters? And I know I learned afterward that Shout Factory is known for having not great shipping. I had always ordered through Amazon and what have you, so I never really had dealt with their shipping before. And so, you know, for a first-time experience, it was a little disheartening. I did send them an email to support. I'm not someone who just bitches and then doesn't do anything about it. I did send an email to support, and they responded and said that they would send back a new couple of posters, and that is this. This is what I got. Hopefully didn't show my address there. There we go. Oh my gosh. Okay, so this is great. So open it up and set that aside. We have a nice bit of wrapping around the posters, which I believe are nice and tightly wound up. Let's see how this looks. And not terrible. You know, not terrible. The edges, I'm sad to say, the edges are still a little, they're not great. You can't even probably, but it's one of those things you probably can't even see. But the edges are a little jacked up. Not as badly jacked up though. And at least it was easy to get them out of the tube. The other tube, it was a giant pain in the ass to get the posters out. These ones, at least, you know, you're not going to see the very, very edge. And all the damage here is to the very, very edge, so that's not terrible. It's still disappointing that when ordering a poster from them. I guess they just can't get past the Edge thing. I'm probably never gonna try, unless it's like unless I'm ordering like a really important film with great poster art. I'm probably never gonna order posters from them again. I'm probably not gonna take them up on the pre-order thing unless I just really want that disc really early, because I think they usually send them like a week, 2 weeks before street date. But I'm just not impressed with their packaging. Even when they seem to have put in effort, it still comes to me slightly damaged. I know that that's a little pedantic to get upset over slight edge damage on a product that is essentially free, but this disc does cost about $35. That's a lot of money for one movie on Blu-ray. So between the kind of lackluster, I don't know what I'm gonna do with this slipcover. If I have a friend who like really wants this slipcover and they didn't get on the first 2,000, I might just give it away. I don't really care about it. Or maybe if I, you know what, this will be if I ever lend out Candyman to a friend, I will put this slipcover on it so that it does not get damaged. And props to Shout Factory for having a slipcase that's easy to get the DVD out or Blu-ray out of. We'll be talking about this a bit more on the next episode where I talk about a Severin release, which has a different size slipcover. But anyway, so let's talk about the deets. So disc 1 contains a 2K restoration of a 4K transfer of the original 35mm negative of the film. What that means is they took a really sweet ass transfer, restored it a wee bit, brought it down a little to fit on a Blu-ray, and bada bing bada boom, you've got a sexy ass image. There's very little damage to the prints. There's very little as far as low resolution. It's all extremely clear. You every so often will get your standard light, dust, and specks here and there, but nothing too crazy. The transfer itself is the best I've ever seen this movie. I don't own the old Blu-ray, or the old DVD rather. I don't own any of the old releases of this film somehow. I think I always watched it through rentals. But it looks great. I mean, you probably couldn't ask for a better transfer. You get a few different tracks. You get a 5.1 surround and a 2.0 stereo. Obviously, if you're listening from just like a single speaker, that's not going to make much difference either which way. But it sounds great. Like Philip Glass's score, beautiful. When Candyman is just doing his old tearing the groin to gullet thing, sounds great. No complaints as far as the transfer goes. Now, it should be noted this is the first time that Candyman has had a 5.1 surround soundtrack on its release, so if your main interest is upgrading your previous DVD copy, that right there should be enough. If you have a nice surround sound system set up at your house, if you've spent the money and you want to get like perfect sound, this Blu-ray is going to do you some good justice. So right there, just picture quality, sound quality, you have essentially the price of the Blu-ray covered. I still think it's overpriced, but if you love Candyman and you want the best possible quality, this is going to do it for you. I'm of the opinion that 4K isn't really necessary for a lot of releases, especially older releases. And I think this is one of those. I don't think, inevitably we're going to get a 4K release of this, I would assume, especially with the Jordan Peele produced Candyman remake coming out. It's probably going to happen. I don't think it's necessary. I think that you'll be fine with this release. I was watching it on a 4K TV. It looked great, even though it's not a 4K release. So just buy this, you'll be fine. Screen Factory doesn't seem to have much interest in foreign views, however. The subtitles are only English. You only get English subtitles. Sorry about that. If you really wanted Spanish, Italian, Japanese, Nordic subtitles, you just got English. Sorry about that. Moving on to the extras. This disc contains a whopping 4 audio commentaries, 2 of which are new to this release. The first is director Bernard Rose and Tony Todd, and it's a really fun commentary. These two seem to really enjoy being around each other. It has a really funny opening, and it's very obviously recent. Tony Todd talks about his not great feelings towards Avengers Infinity War, as well as watching The Quiet Place and a few other recent movies. It's very much a kind of a chat between two dudes who are really proud of what they did. So it's a great commentary track. The second commentary track features Kim Newman and Stephen Jones. Jones is the editor of various horror anthologies, and notably here compiled Clive Barker's A to Z of Horror. Newman is also an award-winning author and journalist, whom some of you may know as the creator of the Anno Dracula series, and the dude behind Empire Magazine's monthly Kim Newman's Video Dungeon. These two are a treat to listen to. They have a vast knowledge of the horror genre. They're pretty much the best of the best when it comes to dispersing that knowledge. Just like the previous commentary, they show a great love for the film. The third commentary is ported over from the DVD, and it features all of the major players. You've got Bernard Rose, you got Virginia Madsen, Tony Todd, Casey Lemons, and the producer Aaron Poole. And it's not my cup of tea. This is one of those commentaries that is essentially they did interviews or commentaries with the individual people involved, and they edited them together. And I'm not a big fan of these, I guess, moderated commentary tracks. They don't feel very natural. They're not as fun to listen to. You don't get the rapport. But this is a good commentary track if you want to learn more about the film. Then you'll get a few decent tidbits along the way. It's not a bad listen, but it's not as interesting or as fun as the others. Now, finally, beyond that, we do have a fourth commentary track. Can you guess why it took me so long to get to this review? This one is, again, Bernard Rose, this time moderated by Joe Lynch and Adam Green from the Movie Crypt. You might know them also as filmmakers in their own right. And this was during a previous charity event, which they're actually, when I'm recording this, they're in the middle of their Save the Yorkie benefit for this year. But this was their first year doing it, which I think was 2016. And they talked with Bernard Rose and did a commentary for the film as part of that. So this isn't a commentary made for this Blu-ray release, but it is the probably easiest way of listening to the commentary with the film. You don't have to sync it up or anything. It's just right there on the disc. And it's a bit more rambly than other commentaries, but it's a lot of fun. And I think that one thing you're going to get out of this about me is I love fun commentaries. I love commentaries in general, but I love fun commentaries more than anything else. So right here you have two filmmakers who love the genre, who love Candyman, with Bernard Rose, who's a joy to listen to. And it's not your standard moderated commentary. It's these three dudes talking about it and enjoying each other's company, and is kind of a highlight of the disc for me. So big props to Shout Factory and Scream Factory for putting this together. Hey guys, so real quick update to this video. As I'm editing, I noticed that, so I rip every file from the Blu-ray that I review so I can get the footage. And even though it's not on any of the menus, as far as I could tell, there is actually also, in addition to the commentary track with the Movie Crypt, the entire Movie Crypt podcast is on the disc. It's just not available when you put it in a Blu-ray player. Let me show you real quick. If you look right here, you'll notice if I go into my file for the theatrical cut disc, then you will see right here, yeah, boom, Movie Crypt podcast, and it's 2 hours 36 minutes long, which is much longer than the actual Candyman film. So that's a neat little thing that I'm not sure anyone would have noticed otherwise. Back to my dulcet tones elsewhere. Two featurettes are ported over from the previous DVD release. We have Sweets to the Sweet, the Candyman Mythos, a 23-minute look at the making of Candyman and its impact on both pop culture and black culture. And then there's Clive Barker, Raising Hell, which is made up of 10 minutes of additional interview footage from Sweets to the Sweet. This little diversion has Barker discussing his career, writing the Books of Blood, where the idea of Candyman came from, etc. It's a nice little ported over featurette. You know, it's a little older looking. It doesn't look like a modern featurette, but it's very good. It's a very good featurette. Now, for some reason, there is an additional interview on this disc that is not actually mentioned on the back of the Blu-ray. And actually the same goes for that commentary. The commentary with Adam Green and Joe Lynch from the Movie Crypt is not listed on the back of the Blu-ray, and nor is an interview with Tony Todd entitled The Heart of Candyman. And it appears to be a new... actually, let's see here. I have the thing brought up. Let's see, disc 1, interview with Tony Todd. Okay, so this is a 2014 interview with Tony Todd, which makes sense. He does look a little less old in this interview, but it's a nicely done interview. It's pretty short. It only is, let's see, I don't even remember. It's 7 minutes long. It's a 7-minute long interview. It doesn't really bring a whole lot new to the table. It's kind of just your standard Tony Todd interview, but it is Tony Todd talking for 7 minutes, which I think is a great Christmas present. There's also a video from the old special edition DVD showcasing some storyboards by Bernard Rose, which I would have preferred as a gallery since they go by rather fast. That video lasts for 5 minutes, and it's of interest to aspiring filmmakers out there, I guess. But again, it goes by really fast, and it only really pertains to a couple scenes from the film. You also get a theatrical trailer, TV spots, a stills gallery comprised primarily of poster art, which I'm not sure what Candyman's fooch is, but I kind of like it. Also unlisted on the back of the case is a copy of the script accessible on your computer via BD-ROM. Now, as if that wasn't all enough, let's mosey on over to Disc 2. Now, Disc 2 contains the unrated cut, as I mentioned. It's fine. It's HD inserts of another print of the film. I think it's an archival print. You can see that it's not quite as well maintained as the new footage. It's very collector good, I guess. Like, I don't really care about it, to be honest. I could have gone with or without it. I would have preferred a copy of the soundtrack on CD. That would have been preferable to an unrated cut, but we don't get that. I understand it's probably expensive to do that. It is Philip Glass, after all. It is a very nice score. Would have been dope, but whatever. Now, most of this disc is all new material. We get an interview with Tony Todd entitled Be My Victim, which is slightly more informative than the interview hidden in disc 1. At 9 minutes, it's scant, but like the previous one, it's still an interview with Tony Todd. Next up is It Was Always You, Helen, an interview with Virginia Madsen, which features Madsen in what appears to be a very comfy chair. She spends 13 minutes talking about everything you'd expect, like the process of playing Helen, working with Bernard Rose, and the rigors of making Candyman. Nice little interview with a great actor. Reflection in the Mirror is a 9-minute interview with Casey Lemons, who, of course, in addition to playing Bernadette, is a very accomplished writer and director. She talks her career and working on the film, as you'd expect, and like the other basic interviews, it's very fine. As a fan of Candyman, it was interesting, but at the same time, it was an interview that was short, and it's cool to see Casey Lemons talk about this. And about her thoughts on horror movies, but it's fine. These interviews are kind of standard, but anyway, moving on. To round out our standard issue interviews, we have A Kid in Candyman. It's a 13-minute interview with Dewan Guy, who played Jake, the kid who shows Virginia Madsen around Cabrini Green. Like the rest of the interviews, this is fine. The one thing that sets it apart is the perspective, which, since the rest of the interviewees tend to repeat what they've said in the larger featurettes and commentaries, this is Dewan's only moment to talk about Candyman on the 2 discs, so we get another perspective on the film. So that's at least something a little bit more different than the rest. The Writing on the Wall, the production design of Candyman, is an interview with production designer Jane Ann Stewart that might give you a better grasp on the themes of Candyman, which are very well established through the film's set design. At 6 minutes, it's pretty quick, but it'll give you more to look out for on your next rewatch. Forbidden Flesh, the makeup effects of Candyman, interviews special makeup effects artist Bob Keane, Gary J. Tunnicliffe of Hellraiser series fame, and Mark Coulier. At the very least, this 8-minute featurette gives you a good idea of how to create fake excrement, which, that's cool. This is actually a really fun one. Effects artists are weird dudes, and we get some really funny stories about the process behind Candyman's hook, the chest appliance, and dealing with all of those bees. My God. In A Story to Tell, Clive Barker's The Forbidden, writer and Barker biographer Douglas E. Winter discusses the original short story. At 18 minutes, this gives us a nice breakdown of both the stories and the film's conception, differences between the story and the film, and in general, offers a nice, open-minded, academic look at the material. Speaking of academic, Urban Legend Unwrapping Candyman is a 20-minute critical analysis by writers Tananarive Due and Stephen Barnes, who are acclaimed authors in their own right, and the former teaches a college course about African-American horror. This one's enjoyable, not just because it's more than just an interview regurgitating facts about Candyman, but also because Tananarive and Stephen are married and have the kind of rapport you'd expect from that. It's a lot of fun to watch these two discuss film and the politics therein, and they're not afraid to criticize Candyman. At no point are they mean about it. Like, I don't think if you get upset by their criticism, you might need to give a little introspection of your own. At one point in this segment, they do talk about the idea of a reimagining of Candyman, a more modern take on Candyman, because this is this kind of story that it does suffer from some weird, I guess, 90s issues. There is a character, for example, who is black who's killed by Candyman, and there's no real reason why that character is killed. Similarly, the idea of the protagonist being white, which Virginia Madsen as the protagonist makes sense in this film. There are themes throughout that kind of are all about the fact that she is white and doing this study. At the same time, as Tananarive and Stephen, as they talk about in their segment, it would be interesting to see this from a totally black perspective, to have Virginia Madsen's character be black. For her to be exploring this exploitation of a black man, for her to be dealing with other black people who are in this far less desirable situation. There's all kinds of places and ways you can go with this story. And it's interesting because, as I mentioned before, we are going to have a Jordan Peele produced film directed by Nia DaCosta. Is it Nia DaCosta? Yes. So we will at some point potentially be seeing exactly what they talk about in this featurette. So that's pretty cool. So moving on. Let's talk about things I might have been disappointed by. I guess first of all, I do have the Blue Underground releases of Zombie and Maniac that I need to review soon. Those are probably not going to come until 2019, to be honest, just because there's so much going on and it is the holidays and I have my movie and all. Anyway, but both of those come with soundtracks. As I noted, really would have loved to see a soundtrack release with this. That seems like for the $35 price tag, it would have been reasonable. But I also understand you can't always get what you want, and this is kind of a big movie compared to the ones that they release. So I guess soundtrack would have been much more expensive, whatever. So there was an Arrow release of this film that was UK only, so it was Region B. And I don't own that release. My understanding is that it's both of them, same transfer. A lot of the same special features are actually on, a lot of the new special features and the old ported over release special features are on that Arrow release. A lot of it's very similar. However, this release contains a few more featurettes, and the one thing that kind of bugs me is the Arrow release has a few short films by Bernard Rose. And I don't know why this release doesn't have those. That seems like something, I'm sure that these two companies had to come to some sort of agreement as far as who could release what. I don't know what the copyright is on those short films from Bernard Rose's career, but I would have really liked to have seen those on here. I'm not sure why that wasn't part of this release. That's the one thing that really makes me wish I owned the Arrow release. But by the same token, this release has more commentaries, which I value slightly more. So, a bit of a mixed bag there. I think that the Scream Factory release overall is the better release. But it would have been cool to have those short films. Let's see. I guess the only other thing I'd think of is I would have liked to have seen a play all button for the featurettes. That's really it. There's not a whole lot else to complain about. I've already talked about the packaging, which isn't that big of a deal if you're just buying this through Amazon or after the 2,000 copies have been sold. So, overall, this is an amazing release of Candyman. Phenomenal film. great transfer. Special features that range between decent and fantastic. I think the commentaries by themselves are worth it. Most of the special features otherwise are kind of fine, but the commentaries, 3 of them are totally worth the price of the Blu-ray. I think if you're a fan of Candyman, if you love horror movies, this is a must-have. So even though I do have a slight bias against Shout Factory, I still think you should go buy this film. So I think that's a ringing endorsement if I ever did hear one. So check it out. Great film, great release. Buy it. Please feel free to follow me on Twitter @Michael Keane. I talk about horror and movies and horror movies.